Hey everyone, my name is Penny Zanker, and it's time to reset. This podcast goes beyond just navigating change. It's about new ways of thinking about how you can approach challenges, how you can shift your mindset when needed, create some space and grace for yourself so that you can rethink, recharge, and reprioritize when and where needed. Are you ready to unlock your full potential? Thank you for hitting play and sharing this next episode with me. It's time to reset. Hello and welcome to Take Back Time. My name is Penny Zanker and I'm your host. And today we're going to talk about leading remote teams. And I know that there's a lot of talk about that going on, and I really feel like you can't talk enough about it because everybody's got some tips and tricks that might just be right for you and your team. So I'm excited to have Andrew Swiler with me today, and he is an expert in this space. He has an amazing team that's around the world, and so he lives it firsthand. And he's an entrepreneur with 12 years of experience starting and acquiring software companies. He's built up a portfolio of small HR SAS companies, and that's why he's working with people around the world. So without further ado, Andrew, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Penny. It's awesome to be here. I'm excited to kind of share what we do with our team and hopefully impart some wisdom that helps some people out there to do a better job managing remote teams.
Awesome. So I'm going to dive into the nitty gritty if that's okay. So a lot of people feel that there are managers who want to get people back to the office because they feel that people aren't working when they're remote. What do you have to say about that mentality and in general, about that statement?
So first and foremost, what I think is that there's a type of company and a type of job for everyone. I think there are people that are made for remote jobs. I think there are people that have a lot of agency, a lot of ownership. They take a lot of pride in what they do. And I think that type of personality lends itself to remote work. On the other hand, there are a lot of people, and it's totally valid. There's a lot of people that like to build relationships with people at work. They use work as a socializing event, and that's where they build up a lot of their day-to-day contact with people. And I think that's completely valid. And I don't think that there's one right way or the other way. I'm not a maximalist. I only run remote companies, but I'm not a maximalist in any way to say no, I can't believe these companies are taking people back to their offices. Because I think there are people for each type of job.
And so that being said I think so too. I think there's some people that just perform better when they're in the office. That's where they like to be. But the fact is that I guess there's not really too many companies now that can be all in present. So then you're going to have a little bit of hybrid. You're going to have maybe, and I think to your point, there are a lot of people out there that are able to work very efficiently at home. As a matter of fact, they might be able to work even more efficiently because there's not somebody stopping by their desk to have a chat with them, or of course there's other distractions, but
that's why they hire you. You're a focus on you.
Well, then I help them get rid of Slack and things like that might also be as much of a productivity tool, also a huge
hindrance. Absolutely. I agree.
But I like your answer, but I wanted to say, how do you do it? How do you create the social connection? Because I think that is important, no matter whether you're hybrid or you're in person. How do you do that with your team to create that social connection so that you feel connected to, and I can reach out for help and we build a relationship, even though we're never going to see each other in person?
For me, it's one of the top 5 most challenging things that we have is building a relationship with people. Especially we have a big portion of our company is based in Ukraine. So we acquired our company from 2 Ukrainian founders. And I think we have almost 10 people based in Ukraine, and they can't leave the country. So the typical remote workforce is we're going to get together every quarter or every 6 months. We're going to do an offsite. We're all going to get together. The company's going to spend all the money they would have spent in the office on this one offsite, and we're going to build this bonding moment. Unfortunately, our team is in a situation where we can't do that. So what we try to do from a bonding perspective is we go a little against the grain and do a lot of synchronous meetings. So we do quick stand-ups, 15-minute stand-ups. Even my partners, the guys that I work with, our CTO, we'll do a quick stand-up, and it's not hey, bang, 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 let's hit the numbers, let's go through everything, let's do the high level. It's let's connect, find out what's going on. Today, our CTO's daughter was sick. I talked to her on Zoom for a few minutes just to connect for a few minutes. And I think that's what's critical about one-on-ones. I mean, there are people that are totally anti one-on-ones. I've heard the arguments for and against it. I think in a remote setting, you need to over communicate all the time, and you need to over accentuate these like interactions that are sort of intimate. So getting together with the people that report to you and just letting them talk about what's going on in their life, what's going on, and understanding them as a person is so critical that the original theory of one-on-ones now is much more important when you put yourself in a remote setting.
Do you think that it's better to have like a loosely structured kind of stand-up connection, or something that's more structured, something that is like, hey, we're going to go around and answer this question, or everybody's going to, you know what I mean? Like some sort of a structured game or way to connect? Or is it better to like leave it loose and have a happy hour and people just like chat?
I think like the happy hour of like the whole team together, at least in our team, has always kind of failed. I think it's too big. It's too many voices. There's too many things going on. Usually like I end up talking most of the time, and like I'll ask people things and then just nobody answers. And you're like,
right,
sitting there with crickets and you're just uncomfortable. And personally, I think it always comes from the top. Like, what does sort of the leadership feel comfortable with and what fits their personality? I'm not somebody that, even if we didn't offsite, I'm not going to be doing trust falls. I'm not going to be like doing games with people. I would rather sit down with them, have a beer or whatever if they don't drink, and just kind of chat about what they're doing, what they feel about the company, understanding them, letting them feel heard in those situations. And I think in remote settings, that's like one of the keys, is just to feel like you have a voice. Mm-hmm. And you're not just like getting these orders from on high that are telling you like, hey, do this, this, and this. It's like, hey, I sent this feedback to you a few weeks ago. And then that became like an actionable thing that happened, which in any company is a super important thing to have. But in remote companies, I think even more, because people want to see that there's like real people doing real things. Because like you said, people can just disappear for days into Slack where you don't hear from them. And they might show up for the weekly meeting and say, hey, I did this, this, and this last week. And you're like, oh, cool. How you doing? Like, haven't seen you or heard from you for 3 or 4 days.
Right.
And they kind of give you an update and you're like, oh, cool. And I think it's a great fit for certain people, especially people that have kids and families. I think remote work is a fantastic way that you eliminate those 2 hours of commute. And those 2 hours then can be dedicated to bringing their kids to school, to picking them up at school, to spending some more time with their family. And so people that prioritize that, I think it's a great way of life. But like I said, they have to have some ownership too in what they do. Otherwise, it's super easy to just disappear into the ether. And we had a sales guy that was working 2 jobs at one point. We had to fire him. Things like that pop up in remote work. The overemployed movement pops up pretty often.
How do you ensure ownership? Let's say ownership and accountability with remote. How do you do it so that it's the right mix, that it's not too much and micromanagement, and it's not so hands off that you don't know somebody's working 2 jobs?
Yeah. The 2 jobs thing it was hard to tell. I think it was actually the other employer that noticed it more than us, because the other employer called me and they're like, the guy was like, does this guy work for you? I saw on LinkedIn he works for me. Yeah, he works for me. And he's like, he just started with us and he's not doing anything. And I was like, oh, well, he's doing an okay job for us. But the lie was, you can't let that stand.
Right.
So we run sort of a model of like OKRs. I think a lot of times people use OKRs like they're too structured and too like, do this, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. And I think it can work for certain companies. I just try and keep an overall goal of saying, like, for example, marketing and sales. You say, we need X amount of MQLs this month. How are we going to get there? And at the beginning of the quarter, we kind of sit down, come up with ideas. And some of those don't work. We throw them over to the side. We sit down again the next week. We come up with new ideas. And our marketing team feels like they're iterating with me or with leadership inside of there. But they also know just the overall goal. It's like, hey, we got to get to X amount of leads, or we're not there. And they own that. And that took a while. I mean, like I said, we acquired this company. It took us a while to get that, because the previous owners it was just kind of like, well, whatever comes in, comes in. And it took a while to get them to own that. And we did have to make some changes. I mean, sometimes, like I said, there's just people that it's not a fit, remote work. It doesn't work for them. They can't feel that ownership with the things they're doing. But if you give people clear goals, you give them clear expectations, like on a week-to-week basis, communicate it, make changes, iterate, then they see that their feedback matters and what they're doing matters to the company. Where if you just say like, hey, we need 50 leads a month, and they just go disappear, and you're like, why didn't we get 50 leads? It's like, well, I don't know. It didn't work. What do you want me to do?
Right.
So
there has to be a little structure,
communication.
Right.
Yeah.
There has to be that structure, that communication. I'm a believer of that too. I mean, even when we're in the office, we need to communicate. So it's not like these aren't fundamentals that make teams and companies work, but I think they become even more important, like you said, even more emphasized on the communication that you can't take for granted when you're next to somebody that you might be able to stop by and have a chat, right? You have to really schedule it and be purposeful about those communication efforts.
Yeah. That in-person communication isn't viewed as negative as it is in a remote setting. Like you said, a lot of times someone pings you on Slack or they want to have a huddle, where if they showed up at your desk, it would be more of a informal kind of thing, where if someone pings you on Slack, you're like, oh, man, I was working on something else. That shift, for some reason, when you're in a remote setting, is a harder shift. And I also think from a structure perspective, I'm a big fan of, I don't know if you ever heard of level 10 meetings from the guys that created EOS, the guys that wrote the book Traction. So level 10 meetings are awesome structures for, like, at the beginning of the meeting, we're just going to go over like the KPIs, like the high level stuff. And the rest of the meeting is basically focused on solving big problems. Like, what's the biggest problem that's in our team right now, in the specific team, whether it's the leadership team, whether it's marketing, whether it's the tech team. And let's just go deep on that problem and see if we can solve it in this 45 minutes. And I think that type of structure that's not too structured, because you are kind of loosely going to discuss something, where I know other people just like hammer the KPIs, go over what they did. Everyone talks about their tasks. What am I doing? What am I doing next week? I think that works in certain areas in certain ways, but I love level 10 meetings because it does give people a chance to sort of like own big problems and discuss them.
Sure.
And I think it helps.
I haven't heard of that, but that makes a lot of sense. And what brings up for me is kind of like theory of constraints, is like constantly looking for the bottlenecks and the issues. That's sort of the way I think too, is look for the biggest obstacle. And then once you find that and you solve that, then you'll find the next one, right? And
the water always flows. It always hits a wall somewhere.
Yeah, it seems pretty logical to me, right?
Yeah.
And yeah, you can beat your head against the wall with what you're doing every day, but people don't need to know what you're doing every day, right? You need to come together to solve problems. So I like that a lot, that model.
Yeah. The biggest issue is when things aren't getting done. I mean, when you do hit a wall and people aren't hitting their KPIs consistently, and you don't really know why, and you don't have an explanation from that. They don't know why either. They can't really explain it. They don't know what to do. Then you run into these situations where that personal relationship that is built up in like an in-office situation might overcome that, where in remote, it can create a lot of tension where it's like, why are we not doing, like, what is going on? Why can't you sort of push us forward on this? And there are some tensions that get created more than in person, where the relationship kind of overcomes that. And I think
why wouldn't that be the same online? Like, if you have a relationship and you can hear the person's tone, and right, if you jump on to say, hey, let's discuss this, isn't it a matter of the quality of the questions that you ask, whether you're in person or not?
Yeah, you're right. I'm
just pushing you because maybe you come up with something that I didn't think about, right? So
no, I'm thinking of a specific issue I'm dealing with right now. So I guess for me, we've been consistently dealing with not hitting certain numbers in our sales team. And as it continues, it's almost like a snowball. It sort of compounds into something bigger. And because you can't sit down and like whiteboard something or kind of get together and really hash out what's going on outside of sitting down for a couple hours and working through some of these bigger problems. But when that consistently isn't getting overcome and you don't really know what the next step is, at least in my feeling right now, compared to other in-person situations, I feel like the tensions grow faster because there isn't that in-person, like, let's sit down, maybe let's go have lunch, maybe let's discuss this. It's like, you have a blocked off time. We're going to talk about it in this blocked off time. We're going to try and figure it out. Okay, we didn't figure it out. Let's block.
So because it's so formal, like that, it creates that tension, I guess. Because you can, I guess you know this, right? There are tools like Miro or different types of dashboard tools where you can do a whiteboard or brainstorm it. And maybe I think sometimes you might come upon, I've been in situations where I was in the office and that happened, quarter after quarter. Nobody's taking sort of ownership. And I find that it's because we ask the same questions and we get stuck in like this pattern of asking the same questions and sort of thinking about things the same way. And I find that whether you're in person or online, it's finding some new questions, some new perspectives, some new ways of looking at the problem, and really seeing also you agree with what the problem is. Maybe you and the other party are seeing it as a different problem, right? Slightly.
So I'm going to turn it back on you. I know this is your podcast, but I'm going to ask you a question then.
Sure.
If they are seeing the same problem, but when the questions are being asked and they're saying, oh, wow, yeah, that is something that we should try, and then it doesn't get executed on, or it's not really pushed through, then I start to see a pattern where I start to think, like I said before, that, and this is normal in any company that's growing. I mean, sometimes there's just people that aren't the right fit for the role that they're in. They were in a role and now they're not in the right role. And that happens a lot.
I mean, you can ask all the questions in the world. That's not going to overcome that. If they're not the right fit for the position, right? Because then they're floundering and they don't know how to execute. They don't have the skill set that they need. And usually you bounce that off to say, okay, well, what resources do you need to make this happen? And you hit the resource side, you hit the different areas. And then there comes a time where you say, okay, it's not a fit.
Yeah. Interesting. I've hit the resource side. I've hit a few different sides in this current situation, so that it's something I've been reflecting on a lot. So I think that it stands out in my mind as this current situation. And in other situations, it has been solved a lot of times by bringing in someone new. I mean, on the technical side, I've seen that solved a lot of times, bringing on somebody that's sort of the next level that does take the technical team and sort of ramps them up and motivates them. So replacement is oftentimes the solution.
Yeah, sometimes. Yeah. And oftentimes, it depends on the circumstance, right? So, but it sounds like you're doing everything that you can, and that does happen. So let's go there. If you have to let somebody go because it's not the right fit or whatever, how do you do that when you're remote? Like, how do you communicate that? And how does that maybe differ from when you're in person?
It has its positives and its negatives. Like my dad, when he talks to me, because my dad hates having employees, like that was like this, he always kind of like stayed as like a solopreneur because he's like, oh, I hate dealing with the employees. And whenever he had employees, and he's like, it must be so much easier remote. Like you fire people and they're like over there on the other side of the planet. So who cares? And I'm like, no, you know their life. You talk to them every day. You know, you're working with them. So the way I've tried to do things is not cutting them off. I try and say like, hey, here's the situation. Usually they kind of know it's coming. I don't just fire people for no reason. Usually there's consistent feedback given. I try and communicate it to them. And then I make a Loom video for the rest of the team, kind of explaining the decision, explaining the reason. I give the person's personal contact to everyone that they can reach out to them. And then try and say like, hey, if anyone has any questions, if you're worried about your job, if you're worried about why this is going on, feel free to reach out to me. And sometimes people do. Sometimes people are like, hey, am I next? Like my salary's I know I have a pretty big salary. And I find that the only thing, like I said before, is over communication with everyone and making sure you're super transparent about it and like always telling the truth, never trying to gloss over anything, never try and make it sound better or worse. Always tell the truth because you know that they're going to talk to that person. And in a remote setting, it's very quick that things can go into Slack DMs, things can turn very toxic very quickly.
Right.
And you just want to be as open as possible all the time, which is in any setting. But I think in remote, it's just a key of using all the tools that are available to you and communicating quickly to people. And so they know right away. And it's not like this person told this person and it has to be the person that made the decision right away, sending out the communication.
Yeah, for sure. Well, listen, is there anything that I didn't ask you that you definitely want to make sure that you mention before we sign off today?
No. I mean, I think remote has its positives and negatives. I think for me, one of the most positive things, one of the things I love about being able to work remote is we do a lot of recruiting where I'll go on LinkedIn. We have maybe a marketing job and I'll go on LinkedIn and I'll post it in 20 different cities, 30 different countries, and run a post every single day and collect 50 people a day. And you just get an amazing collection of people that apply to these jobs that if you just are trying to hire them in Denver and you're just stuck with that pool of candidates, I'm sure you can find a great candidate. But the flexibility of finding these people that have these different backgrounds working at different companies, and you can find people that work for like a competitor of yours that is working in a different country that has the exact skill set you need. And I think that flexibility is absolutely incredible if people harness it.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, for sure, you have so many more people available to you and people want to do that. They want to move to different places and be able to work from wherever. So that's an advantage for them and for you.
Yeah. It's not just the cost savings. A lot of people view it as cost savings or things like that, but it's just availability. You just have more people and more capacity available to you. than ever before, and more perspectives. Like people from different countries have different perspectives and they bring that to the table, and it's interesting.
Absolutely. It's very interesting. One last question, because this just came up. You're in different time zones. Is there any trick to dealing with the different time zones?
So I, as like the leader of the company, I keep a pretty open calendar. I mean, I think that just kind of comes with the job. Also, like our CTO, anyone that's sort of in leadership, they kind of keep a big range because we go from like India to California. So it's a pretty big change. I mean, I live a pretty normal life. I tend to think that sort of the we do try and push like asynchronous ways of doing things when people are sort of off. And we try and say, make sure that when you're signing off the day before, if you need something from someone that you know that's going to be up before you, make sure you ask them before you sign off, because otherwise you lose 24 hours basically if that communication doesn't take place at the right moment. So we always just try and tell people, like, if something's going on, make sure you communicate it before the end of your day, so somebody can maybe pick up that task or that problem when they wake up. That's like one of the key things for me. And just being responsive. If people really reach out to you like in a DM in Slack, or they send you an email, like make sure you don't take 48 hours to respond to them. If it's someone on your team, try and get back to them and make them feel like they matter and their voice is being heard.
Absolutely. And I don't know if you do this, but a way to also help that is to have different channels for different types of urgencies and different types of communication, so that you also are really clear. This one, I need to be super responsive, but these other ones, I don't. Because if you've got to have your hands and be listening in 5 different channels, you'll never get any work done either, right?
Yeah. We try and have some protocols around, if you at someone or mention them, like that's something that's urgent and the person should respond within X amount of time. But it doesn't always get followed. Sometimes people put their things on mute, especially developers. Like they tend to disappear for like 8 hours at a time and just code, which is fine. But we try and keep some sort of protocol.
Sure. No, that's great. So tell us where people can reach you and find out more about you and your company.
So, I mean, you can find me on LinkedIn, Andrew Swiler, Swiler, on Twitter. Those are pretty much the 2 places I'm active on. Twitter, it's Swiler, Swilera is my handle. And you can visit our company if you are an HR professional, Lanteria, LANTERIA.com.
It'll be in the show notes too, just in case.
Come take a look if you're looking to optimize your HR processes.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for being here. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Penny. I really appreciate it. It was great to talk to you.
My pleasure. And thank you all for being here. This is an important topic. I think we did get a nice different nuance here from Andrew, and be thinking about how you're working with your people remotely. And are you communicating as much as you need to? Are you over communicating? There was a word that you used that I was going to repeat, but I can't even read my own notes. But so really be listening to your people, making sure that they feel heard, that they feel valued, and making sure that you're creating that social connection, even if you're not physically present. So thanks for being here. My name is Penny Zanker, and this is Take Back Time. We'll see you in the next episode. Hey, thank you for spending this time with me. It really means a lot. If you're feeling a little off, distracted, overwhelmed, stuck, or just out of sync, remember that's your signal to reset. And that's all it takes, just recognizing one reset moment at a time. So stay tuned for more tips, tools, tricks, stories, strategies, all here on Time to Reset. We'll see you in the next episode.